Hello, welcome everybody to today's HR Huddle, March 28th, last week of March. Unbelievable. I hope some of you are enjoying some spring. I know we did not here in Minnesota this past weekend. The sun was misleading, but we know it's on its way. So, and we hope everybody's doing well. We know a whole chunk of deadlines got done and projects, and I know there's more to come. We're like at the 21st mile of the marathon that everybody's running. And so we hope everybody's doing well and able to take a breath. And we're glad you're here with us today. We actually came up with a 3-part series that Jen and I are going to talk about from an HR perspective that we'll get to in a moment. But we thought we should stop and talk about the Oscars last night and about some behavior at their place of employment that most of the nation witnessed. I happened to witness it after the fact, but I couldn't help seeing it and went back and watched the debacle between Chris and Will and what happened in that whole interaction. And Jen and I were talking here before we jumped on, and we were just looking at, breaking it down from a behavior perspective. And we've talked a lot about leadership behavior and, expectations in a place of employment. And, that stage is their place of employment. And, Chris probably needs to look at his use of humor, because it was insensitive and, was making fun of a disability, whether he knew it or not. I know there's debates about that right now, about whether he knew that or not. But that's why we really need to scrutinize the use of humor. And I've been trying to teach my 14-year-old son this. He's like, it was just a joke. And I'm like, but it's not funny. And if it's at somebody's expense, and I know comedians, poke fun, and that's what we laugh at as the audience. We poke fun at people, but we have to be very, very careful about that. And so, that was the first thing that happened. And, then Will's response, both verbally and physically is never allowed. And the verbal, we like to say, we have to pay attention to how we're speaking to our people, be respectful. We can't be, condescending. We can't be out of anger, and then to physically react. So, he probably needs some anger management, coaching and perspective, and, taking that breath before reacting, but just looking at, gosh, how do we want to behave in our workplace? And then with an audience, you can think about, we're in a meeting and this happens. And we see this in partner meetings. We see it in leadership meetings. We've seen it from the stage at some conferences we've been at, and we've cringed at some of the comments and some of the things, not physical. We have never seen the physical, thank goodness, but we've cringed at some of the jokes and some of the comments, and then the responses, that come back from it. And, I think we just really have to pay attention to it. It's a good lesson, for us to learn. So Jen, what would you add to that?
Just that it's like it's a sad commentary, in many respects. First of all, humor, I guess in the olden days, it was, humor to tear people down was funny, or something. And to go after the weak and the minority, or the people in a position of, subordinate to us or whatever, to go after people that can't defend themselves or something, that was like old vaudeville humor or something. It's okay to tear people down. Today, better humor is humor where we're part of the joke, where we're laughing at ourselves and others can relate because they have the same circumstances or something. But, if your joke isn't uplifting and supportive, and you're not involved directly, and there's a risk of strong offense at work, it's never appropriate. It should never show up. And anyway, I kept trying to be, like a passive watcher of this whole nightmare, like I was, just a TV entertainment watcher or something. But I kept thinking about, this is their work. And, Will Smith is at the pinnacle of his career, getting like the highest honor ever, and caused himself to look like somebody no one would want to hire. It's like a nightmare. It's a total nightmare. And so anyway, I just think that those observations you made there, Tamera, are excellent. And just, we should all look at that. We should look at, do I need sensitivity training? Do we need to talk about sensitivity in the humor? We say all the time that people use humor as a way of expressing their truth kind of sideways.
Right.
Like I'll make a jab or a joke at your expense in front of everybody, talking about something about you that I don't like or that irritates me. And that's not inspiring, motivating leadership, and it's not 2022 leadership.
No.
And so I was sad to see it because it looked like the olden days or something. That did not look like 2022 and the evolved people that I thought were present at that event. So anyway, very interesting. So let's,
one thing.
Yeah.
One more thing that we were going to say about that was the third piece of it. So there's the sensitivity training, anger management, and how to, just manage ourselves, both verbally and physically, and how to apologize.
Oh, yes.
So we could work on.
Yeah. Well, what's so sad is Will does this before he gets his award, so he has to use his acceptance speech to try to rationalize it or make sense of it. It was the cringiest, I don't know how many minutes. They gave him way too long too. They should have played the music and sent him on. And I felt bad for him because he didn't have enough time to really prepare and think about what he was saying, but he didn't really apologize, in my opinion. And certainly he had an apology to make to Chris Rock for hitting him, and yes, Chris Rock could, has an apology to make for hurting Jada's feelings and for being so insensitive, right? But Will had the mic and he was, he apologized to the Academy and a bunch of other stuff, but he never point blank said, "I am sorry for my actions and I am sorry that I hit you," which is never an okay thing. So I was sad about his kind of sideways apology. Not only did he do some other goofy stuff, but
right.
Not a great apology, not a powerful, 100% responsible apology. And of course, I'm sure somebody was in his ear about legal, risk management and whatever else. But it was just all the way around. It was a lose-lose on the HR side, I thought.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things we teach is we use Randy Pausch's from the last lecture approach to an apology and, apologize, for what happened. And so, I can apologize for hitting him because that happened, or I can apologize for your experience of something. It doesn't mean I am taking fault for it. I think that is one of the reasons we don't apologize, Jen. I think that the legal or I'm not at fault. But if I apologize for that, and then what am I committed to, which I think was missing in Will's statement? What am I committed to going forward? And then what can I do to make it right? And he might not have been able to address that last night, but he can say, I'll look at that going forward, what I can do to make this right. So if you look at those three components, that's how we would teach, an apology. And in the moment, it's not easy. So to have to go right up there afterwards, I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but if we know this ahead of time and can practice it in the moment, we can bring it to ourselves. So we just wanted to bring those, it's kind of gross, but we just thought it was appropriate for HR discussions that we're having as we're looking at that, because again, we see it in our organizations that we're working with, and I'm sure you've seen it in different places. And so how do we coach around that? So we thought it was important. Sure. So yes, then our topic, we are going to do a recruiting series. And we thought today we would start and talk about sourcing. And then we would talk about
screening.
I don't know why I can't remember that word today, Monday. And then we're going to talk about onboarding. And so we're going to do that over the next, 3 weeks. So we're going to start today, with sourcing. And we just know recruiting is something that everybody's been working on. We've been encouraging continuous recruiting, getting dedicated recruiters, or at least a portion of a job dedicated recruiting, because it's so important. But we also want to make sure we're doing the right recruiting. And we know there's a balance happening right now where we have to act fast because it's competitive. And we need to make offers, and we need to, be out there with the, candidates that we're speaking to. And we want to take our time and make sure we hire the right people. And it's probably a fine balance. It's a tricky balance right now. And so we thought we'd talk about some best practices in those three areas to help us, hire the right people, and then make sure their onboarding experience is a positive one when we do get a yes and we bring them on. So we thought we would start with the sourcing. So Jen, I don't know if there's a place you want to start with the sourcing, or if you want me to jump in with that, or.
Well, I'll just start by saying that, normally we're sourcing three kinds of candidates for our firms, and maybe this is a gross oversimplification, but, on-campus candidates for either accounting or technology or, consulting advisory, whatever it is that we're looking for there. So the on-campus piece, there's the experienced hire piece for the technical or client-facing talent. So experienced hire CPAs, experienced hire advisors, and other technical talent. And then there's an operational or administrative recruiting process that we go through, and less common to go after those folks on campus, more common to look at experienced hire recruiting for those folks. So, I think where we need to focus today is experienced hires, because I think that's where most people are challenged, and one thing to make perfectly clear, hiring is a bear for all of us because there's a shortage of human beings that have the skills that we need in our firms. So when we're experienced hire recruiting, we are hiring people in the olden days that were unemployed, but it's pretty rare that they're unemployed these days, or they're working for a competitor, or they're working in another city maybe and moving to your city, or they're working in another city and desirous of remote work, and maybe their current employer isn't going to support that and you don't care where they live, and so they're a candidate for you. But for the most part, we're stealing people. That's the truth of it. I always tell firms, if you find somebody that's on the street unemployed, and they are seeking a job at your place, scrutinize carefully. The entire screening talk that we give next week, you'll have to do that times 2 or something, because oftentimes an unemployed technical talent is one that has had either a behavioral issue or they have had a competence issue of some kind, a skill or ability, or often speed issue, and then they didn't make it at the firm they were at, and they were let go. And so we have to scrutinize that. Now, yes, there are exceptions to that. There are people who are relocating. There are people who took a break. Certainly in this great migration / resignation, there's also a little bit of great vacation or something. People taking a break, their own homemade sabbatical. And so I'm not saying never ever consider it, but just careful about that. And so on this stealing thing, okay, if we're going to be stealing people, just recognize that hiring and hoping you can be the destination workplace everybody wants to come to, migrating away from terrible workplaces, that's awesome. That's a great strategy. That better not be your only capacity planning strategy, because there just aren't that many people to fill the gap for all the growth you could have. So we want non-traditional capacity strategies. Maybe that's a 4th in this series, Tamera.
Yeah.
Offshoring, outsourcing, fractional, part-timers, retirees, administrative support people into the workflow, all that. And that's not in scope here for this experienced hire recruiting discussion. But anyway, Tamera, maybe you want to talk about some of the places that we've seen and had the best experience sourcing.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple. I mean, first of all, you've got to talk about it and share it. I mean, that's like the umbrella of it, is we have to share what all those positions are and give the job descriptions and give the positioning to our people, to our referral sources, and that we're putting it on our website. I'll have, firms talk to me about their hiring for these positions, and I'll go to their website and I'm like, no, you're not. It's not current on your website, so there's like all those basics, but we've got to be talking about it. And part of where we talk about it is we do a friends and family communication. And you can do it in email. We do a friends and family email. We also can do a friends and family communication out on our social media. We would encourage people to say, hey, we're hiring. We see a lot of firms out there, and we try to like it and continue to promote it. We don't share them because we are working with firms. So our philosophy is we're not trying to help recruit CPAs or consultants, because that's just not a fair practice. But we do try to encourage the marketing of it, and that is how we should be seeing it. So we're happy when we're seeing that, and we can give a template. Caroline, maybe we can share a template, with these guys, or you guys can email us and ask for a template for the friends and family, and you can give that to your people, edit it, and have them share it on LinkedIn, have them share it in social media, have them do an email, and it literally is to friends and family saying, hey, we're growing, we have an open position, and we would love, if you're looking for this kind of firm and this kind of environment, this kind of work, that you can apply here. This is where we should be looking. And so I think right behind that is, I think LinkedIn is one of our best sources that we're seeing from sourcing of experienced hires. And you have to get really good at the job description, how we're messaging it, and probably boost those ads, be very targeted about it, because we do get a lot of resumes that are not qualified. And so that's part of the screening process we'll talk about next week. But to help minimize that, or at least reduce it some, we have to be very specific in that messaging and use the tools that are out there. But I think LinkedIn is probably right behind our word of mouth. And our word of mouth is not just oral. It is those friends and family emails and friends and family LinkedIn communications. So I think those are the big ones that I would start with, Jen.
Yeah, I think also, I have found most effective, besides posting on LinkedIn or social media, also using LinkedIn as a data analytics tool to identify the candidates that fit the criteria you're seeking. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will tell me, man, I don't have time for this. And I'm like, well, you don't have time to not have leverage. You're not going to grow. You're trapped in this vicious circle. And the only way to get out of a vicious circle where you don't have time is to spend a little time in quadrant 2 and invest in something pretty darn proactive. And so certainly paying the upgraded fees to LinkedIn for their recruiting solutions makes sense. But also, like, searching LinkedIn, whether you have a paid account or a free account, and searching LinkedIn for the specific criteria that you are seeking. So if I am looking for I'm gonna look for a unicorn for a minute. Ready? I'm gonna look for a tax manager, real estate, Pittsburgh or something. Okay, real estate tax managers are super hard to find. So, but I'm going to do that, and I'm going to refine my search using LinkedIn search tools. And we keep our accounts free for those of us who teach some of this, because we want to show what you can do for free, and it's an awful lot. And so what that will do is it'll pull the names of the people in a search list, essentially, all the people that have those words, tax manager, real estate, Pittsburgh, in their profile. And then you go in and use the refine tool, which is really easy. It's at the top of the LinkedIn, masthead, essentially. And you refine, and you say maybe Pittsburgh greater area, and you say currently employed in public accounting. And I'm not sure how else I would refine it, but probably those two things for sure. That'll get your numbers down in that list that you have. And then some poor person has to start looking at that list and identify, like, which ones of these candidates look interesting to us. Some of them will have had those same words in their profile, but now they're a partner somewhere. They're not a candidate.
Right.
You left and went into industry, and what they're doing isn't what you're interested in anymore. Or they're very close to retirement, and you're seeking somebody that might be a long-term solution for a path to partner. So they're not a candidate. So some poor person has to slog through. Now you can save that search, which is cool. So you can save it to your LinkedIn, and it'll be there for you. That group will be there for you to look at. And you kind of go page by page and start looking at them. And if you see an interesting profile, then you reach into them. Now, I would reach into them not using LinkedIn, because we all know that LinkedIn messaging has turned gnarly, and people are spamming us with the direct messaging on LinkedIn. So I don't think that's an easy way to reach people. But I would then go offline and Google the folks that you think are interesting and see if you can get email contact information, or find them in other social media like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and catch them there. And the approach that we always recommend, and we teach this also, like at CPE events. If you're at CPE events and they are starting to become in person again, that's fun. If you're at a CPE event, you can introduce yourself to people, and if they look to be, in public accounting or whatever your candidate criteria is, they have a similar discipline, you can introduce yourself, and at some point you can say, hey, our firm is hiring a tax manager for real estate, and I wondered if you might know of anybody who would be interested. And that's what you say when you do this outreach, whether it's in person or whether it's via social media or whether it's via email. And we'd really appreciate any referral that you have. And that way the person doesn't feel like you're personally recruiting them, and they don't have to reject you. And they might know people that are interested, or they themselves might be interested, and they might say, tell me more. And it feels like a less sort of direct reach. And that's what we'd recommend for that. But we find that the very best way to find people is that direct method, not hoping that an ad reaches them, not hoping that some sort of email will reach them, but instead to just direct reach. Now, the other thing is, I can tell on LinkedIn who I know that's connected to these candidates that I think are interesting. And Tamera, maybe you want to say a little bit about that. I look at those connections that they have, and that's a way to reach them too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were talking about that. Is one of the beauties about LinkedIn is not only can I reach out directly to them, and I love those approaches, is I can look and say, hey, Jen and Caroline both know them. And I can say, Jen and Caroline, how do you guys know Jack? And, maybe you did a CPE event together, or maybe you're part of the young, professionals at the state society, or maybe you went to the same school together and you don't know each other. But I can go and find out. And then maybe there's a way for you, Jen or Caroline, to have a direct reach out to them. And we would do a similar approach. Say, hey, we're hiring a tax manager in real estate, and I came across you in LinkedIn, or I saw you recently at that event we were at, or whatever it might be, and just thought I'd ask. And so, that is a great, almost warm way in, because especially if they know each other, maybe they're just connected, it's not as warm. And while I'm talking about that, one thing we would coach leaders, so to the HR professionals and the partners, is pay Caroline or Jen for making that reach your referral bonus. So you could say, but I did the work, or my HR, coordinator is the one that did all of the, research, but I'm taking my risk, or Caroline or Jen, in my case here, are taking their risk. One of them took the risk to reach out and, make that effort and make that introduction. And if they get hired, we would pay that referral bonus.
Yeah.
So those are some places, from an experienced hire. I know we're about at time. Any other last minute ones to add?
Well,
more to next week too, but
I'm going to jump on your referral bonus program. And the last thing to say is just go out and promote that thing regularly. Keep it in front of people. And every time somebody earns it, make a big deal about it. Advertise it, keep it alive. A lot of people say, we have it. We rolled it out once. It's in the handbook. Nobody remembers it. And if it's not 5 digits to the left of the decimal place, it's not going to incent people to take the risk of referring somebody that they know and love into your firm. It is a career risk to do that. So make it lucrative. Pay what you would pay a headhunter and see what happens.
Yes, great. All right, well, we will continue this discussion next week. We'll pick up on anything else from sourcing that we might have thought of between now and then we're going to go right into screening next week. So we look forward to seeing you. If you have any questions on this topic or anything you want us specifically to address, let us know. You can message us in social media, or you can email us, and we will take those notes. Otherwise, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you in April. We'll talk soon.